So now this is me. This is all of that gear that you saw all over the floor in my house. Then this is it all packed up, packed up and ready to go on the camping trip. So bring in the kayaks and the stand-up paddle boards and tents and everything. So I am a gearhead, gear junkie, whatever you want to call it. I love it. So I love to be able to host camping trips now and bring the gear for you guys so that you can see what you like and just have things to play with before you invest in it. Okay, so speaking of investing, let's talk about tents because that's the primary thing that you need to go camping. These are basically the 3 different areas of tents that you're going to choose from. The very beginner tent, you can get a decent tent now for $40 brand new. But do me a favor, go to Academy and get the Magellan tent. This is the picture of the 4-person Magellan tent that you can get at Academy. Don't get the Walmart brand, that Ozark Trail. I have not had good luck with that brand in tents. It might be good for something else. Even the pop-up tents, that Ozark Trail brand for me has broken down really fast. And so I don't recommend that brand. But I do recommend the Magellan $40 tent that's at Academy. Now, what you want to note, this is a good starter tent, but it is not wind rated. Okay. So if you're going to be setting up your tent in a cool spot like that first story that I was telling you about, I would not bring this tent. Okay. Yeah. I don't think that the poles would last with any amount of strong wind. So if you're going to be someplace where you can't easily get into your car, leave the area, then don't bring a beginner tent. Okay. So beginner tents are for beginner camping trips where you have access to other things if you need it. Now, if you know that you like camping, this middle tent and you want to do tent camping, car camping, glamping kind of things, this middle tent, this Coleman Dark Room tent is perfect. This is my number 1 tent that I recommend for people to get, especially with this little patio out on the front. You got their little screened in patio. The dark room technology on this Coleman tent is amazing. And with us being in Texas, it is totally worth it. What it does is it's like a blackout curtains, and it repels the heat. I know it's black, but it repels the heat so that your tent stays cooler when it starts getting warmer outside and when the sun's hitting it. I have started adding these tents to the BCO HTX loaner gear equipment that we let our members use when we're camping. These tents are amazing. So I definitely recommend the Coleman Dark Room technology. This is the 4-person tent. When they say 4-person, they don't mean 4 people can sleep in there. They have a picture that shows 4 people and you are like head to toe, head to toe, head to toe. So a 4-person tent is good for tent camping, is good for 2 people with your gear. But if you want to be comfortable, get the 4-person tent. They do make the 2-person, 2 or 3-person tent. And then they also make the 6 to 8-person tents, which you can get if you want to do more of a glamping situation. So the picture that I showed you with the table inside, that was a 6-person tent. Now, one thing that you want to keep in mind before you decide if you want a 4-person tent or a 6 or 8-person tent is that depending on where you're going camping, they have designated tent spots and you have to put your tent in that spot. So if you're going with other people, if you're sharing that spot with other people, you'd all have to be in that one little spot. So keep that in mind. But also sometimes the actual campsites are really small. Like you only get enough room for a little bit of things. The other thing you want to keep in mind with the size of the tent is that when you're setting up your tent, you're going to want to look for as flat of a spot as you can so that you're comfortable when you're sleeping. The bigger the tent is, the harder it's going to be to find a flat spot or like a not rocky spot. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about what size tent, where are you going to be taking this tent? and will it fit? And then if you're backpacking, this is a little 1-person tent that you can get. You want light is better. Like I said, we have other videos that are on backpacking. So for today, basically anything at REI that's made for backpacking will suit your needs, but they tend to be more expensive. Okay. I'm not going to show you how to set up a tent today because in this format, it wouldn't be very effective, but we do have other videos on how to set up a tent, which I will also talk about how you can get access to those videos at the end. But a couple of things that I wanted to just make sure that you know, some pro tips about setting up a tent is stake down the tent after you put the poles in. A lot of people want to stake down the tent first and then put the poles in. But what happens is if you try to stake down the tent first, you're either going to stretch it out too much and then you might snap a pole when you're trying to get the pole in, or you can kind of see how the tent right here on the left side is kind of baggy. If you stake it down first, then you might not get that tension that you need, and then you're going to have to restake it. So you might as well wait, put the poles in first, and then stake the tent down. Now, the exception is if it's windy, because if it's windy, it's going to be flying around everywhere. So if it's windy, just haphazardly put one or two stakes in just so that it's not blowing around and you can keep control of it enough for you to be able to get the poles in. And then the second pro tip is when you put the tarp, if you put a tarp underneath the tent, you want to make sure that no piece of the tarp is hanging outside of the rain fly. Because if it is and it rains, then all that tarp is going to do is funnel water between the tarp and the tent, and then you're going to get wet. So you want to make sure you fold the tarp under and make sure that the tarp is completely under the tent and you can't see any piece of the tarp outside of the rain fly. Okay. Oh, when you go camping with HTX Outdoors and Bayou City Outdoors, then we show you in person, and we also do some camping 101s live where we show you in person how to do it. So members like Andrew went on, he's been on so many of our camping trips, and he is the kind of person that loves watching all the videos. So every camping trip, he always had like a new camping tip to share with us. So that was great. So there's always plenty of people around to help you set up your tent to make sure that you're doing it right. All right. To round out the conversation on gear, basically, this is the bare minimum gear that you need to get started camping. You need a tent, which members can borrow for free. You need a sleeping bag or sheets and blankets, depending on the weather. But again, at Academy, the Magellan bag is really good and it's a decent price to get started. And it goes down to 30 degrees, I believe. So that'll be in the gear recommendations document that I send to you guys. A ground pad or like a yoga mat would even do, just some barrier between you and the ground. If it's cold, it'll keep you warmer. And if it's warm, it will actually keep you cooler. A pillow, I always forget my pillow. And then I end up having to stuff all my clothes into each other and creating a pillow out of my clothes. So just keep that on your list. Some kind of light source. And if you want to keep your night eyes for stargazing, get a red light. Academy has a really cool one, but it's a stick light. It's not a headlamp, but it has magnets on it. So you can stick it to if you have a metal table or a pop-up tent for shade, you can stick it to it and it makes like a nice like lantern. And then it's small enough to just use with your hand. So that's pretty cool. Different layers of clothing because the temperature is going to change between daytime and nighttime. For me, a chair is not optional. I put optional here because you technically don't need it. Everything else you do need, but a chair for me is not optional. So I put it in the top part. I like something comfortable. A lot of the campsites will have a picnic table, but I like to have something with a back if you're going to be there all weekend. And then your food. Everything else is literally optional. So all of these things that we think about with camping, or did I forget something that's not optional, like your toiletries? Of course, like your personal toiletry should be on here too. Basically, this is the bare essentials that you need to camp. And I guess if you're sleeping in your car, you don't even really need a tent. You just need space in your car and a place to park.